Hello, world, and welcome to Post Credits Commentary, a podcast where we make commentary post credits.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Allison.
Join us weekly as we give you our unfiltered opinions and hottest takes on recently watched films.
And spoiler alert, there will be spoilers.
Grab your popcorn, silence your phones, and let's roll the tape.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Post Credits Commentary. The movie we're discussing this week is called The Life of Chuck.
What's The Life of Chuck about, Allison?
The Life of Chuck is an adaptation from the Stephen King novella by the same name, and it follows the story of a man named Chuck. And we go through important moments in his life in reverse chronological order. So starting from his death and all the way to his childhood. And essentially see all the moments that formed Chuck.
Yep, that sums it up. Let me tell you, I adore this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really good. It's my second favorite movie of the year.
Saying some.
I think the way they tell the story, and I know Stephen King had parts to, he had a say in this because my understanding, I haven't read the book or the novella.
I also have not.
So my understanding is that it's a very faithful adaptation to what Stephen King initially wrote. So he gets a lot of credit for how they chose to tell this story. But I think it works brilliantly, honestly. Yeah, really good. Music was good. Shots were good. It's a pretty movie.
Mm-hmm.
Acting was good. Also, there's narration in this, and I'm not a narration guy, but the narration here works quite well. It works really well. And I think part of that has to do with Nick Offerman being the narrator. He's just perfect for this. But yeah, really solid movie. Really near perfect. I have some complaints. We'll talk about it later. But my complaints, I have counter arguments that I myself thought of about my complaints. So we'll get there. But pretty near perfect for me. What were your thoughts?
My initial thoughts, really, really good movie. I love the messaging in the movie. The sound. It's a movie that I probably would like to see again, but maybe just once. I don't know that I need to see it more than once.
I also want to see it again. There's a reason for it, besides that I enjoyed the movie. But
based off of how it's told, I feel like watching it again helps you just further connect the story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, overall, a really good movie.
So you're ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go.
So, as Allison stated previously, this is told in reverse chronological order. So we're actually going to start with Act 3 and go all the way to Act 1. So Act 3 is called Thanks, Chuck. It introduces our main character of the third act, a middle school teacher named Marty Anderson, who's played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. And I gotta say, right off the bat, I think this might be my favorite performance. Might be. I have another one that sticks in my head.
When you say favorite performance, you mean by an actor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow.
I have another one in my head, but that's not till Act 1.
Got you. Okay.
But basically, they lose the internet in the middle of the school day. And he has parent-teacher meetings with a lot of the parents of some of his students, but the internet is not coming back. People are starting to wonder if the world is ending.
And then as time goes on, we start seeing some natural disasters increasing.
And we also meet Felicia Gordon, played by Karen Gillan, who works as a nurse, one of the Suicide Squad, they call them. And she's also having trouble with the world ending, supposedly. And both of them, Marty and Felicia, see or hear, because Felicia hears it on the radio, and Marty sees it while driving home. Marty sees a billboard thanking an accountant named Charles Krantz for 39 great years. And then Felicia hears it over the radio thanking Charles Krantz for 39 great years. So Felicia ends up calling Marty.
They know each other.
Yes, they are exes. Felicia calls Marty, and they discuss if the end of the world is upon them. Because...
Feels like it is.
Yeah. And this, right off the bat, too, this whole setup, as someone who knew nothing going in, was so intriguing to me. I was trying to figure out what was going on. Was the world actually ending?
Yeah, I fully agree. In general, I feel like this act feels very different from the next two.
Correct. Which some people don't like, but I'll get into why I ultimately think it works as we continue. Charles Krantz, by the way, in these ads is played by Tom Hiddleston. He doesn't do much in the ad. He just kind of sits
Just
there.
his face.
But then Marty sees another ad for it on TV. And so Charles is showing up everywhere.
And also, the TV is starting to fail to play regularly aired news or anything like that, but it will flicker in these ads for "Thanks, Chuck." So Marty's like, "What's going on?" And we're starting to realize Marty and Felicia don't know who this Chuck person is.
Yep, they have no idea. They've never seen this man. They've never met this man. They don't know what's going on. They don't know who he is. But he's being thanked, and it's the only thing coming through on television and over the radio and all this. I want to highlight here, because we are in the writing section as well, I want to highlight the speech that Marty gives Felicia. And I can't really begin to explain what he was talking about because it sounded very smart, but it was about how the entire universe, it's like a Carl Sagan thing, right? And I'm assuming that was real footage we saw.
I believe it was.
Yep. So he explains it better, but how the entire life of the universe can be condensed down into one calendar year.
Right, so if you were to take the entire timeline of the universe, but fit it into one calendar year, what would equate to that amount of time within one calendar year?
Yeah, and this, to me, was just very compelling and also a little scary, because I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like it made sense what he was saying, and I was just I was like, dang.
Yeah, ultimately, it shows that, like, all of humanity and all these big important things that you know of and have heard of have happened in like the last milliseconds of the entire lifetime of the universe.
And it just kind of goes to show how insignificant we are,
Yeah.
which will tie in beautifully with the themes later. But I felt like that needed to be highlighted, and I wish I could talk about it more, but I honestly can't remember
Yeah.
exactly what was said.
I also feel like thinking about it does make you feel so like insignificant. But when Marty was telling the story to Felicia, it was not in like for her to feel bad about it. It was for her to feel better because she's thinking, is this like the end? And he's basically saying that even if it might be, this is still like the beginning of something else. So, yeah.
Yep. So phone service eventually goes out, electricity goes out, and this is where Marty meets his neighbor Gus,
Yes.
played by oh my goodness. Played by
Do you not know how to say the name?
Matthew Lillard. And I was thinking, I couldn't remember who played him. So I know I just said that Marty is the best performance.
You really like this one.
But Matthew Lillard kills it.
And he's in here for such a short amount of time, but
It's
like,
very short. Yeah.
he plays this character so specific, and it's, yeah.
He, honestly, his dialogue was getting me. Like, I felt his fear and his
Yeah, and also
disdain.
because like when he first starts talking, he's, I don't want to say nonchalant, but like he's just mentioning these crazy things that are happening that most people would probably like start freaking out about, and he's just kind of like, yeah, and that happened, and then this happened, and but then as he goes on, it's like he's finally like letting the realization break free now that he's spoken it aloud. Just like how bad the world's getting.
I also, it feels very relatable. Like, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't want to talk about what's wrong, and they're just kind of like, yeah, like this happened. But then when you get them going, they start opening up and start having that breakdown.
Another thing I've learned is that Stephen King wrote the original in 2020.
Yep.
Which I think is like so encompass the feelings of 2020 in this first act. But eventually we have electricity is out.
Cars don't work. Marty ends up seeing the head of the bank that the Thanks Chuck billboard is on. And he goes and talks to her, but she doesn't know who Chuck is. Chuck doesn't work at the bank.
Essentially, nobody knows
Nobody
who
knows
Chuck is. None of the neighbors, nobody.
So then, when all is lost, Marty decides to go physically walk to Felicia's home in an attempt to get back together.
Yes, because he had tried calling her. He can't get in touch with her. Things aren't working, so he's just going to walk there.
And I think if Act 3 were to have a theme, not that we're at themes yet, but I think this would be one where, why do we need the world ending to get together? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's also the theme of like something big like the world ending shows you what really matters and how the stupid things you thought were important before aren't actually important.
Correct. But I think it's another reason I love this so much is because I do think while the whole story gives a lesson, I think each act also gives an individual lesson.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of special what Stephen King was able to do here.
I think that theme of what really is really important when it comes down to it is also stated in a conversation that Felicia has with one of the doctors at her job, where they're talking about, do you think marriage or divorce rates go up or down with all this chaos happening in the world? And Felicia basically says marriage, because part of her reason is that divorce takes forever and it's the end of the world, so there's no time for divorce. But it's also like, it's the end of the world. Like,
Yes, I was going to talk about that conversation, but I didn't know where to fit it in. So thanks for bringing it up here. So one thing in the Felicia section we didn't really talk about was that all of the heart monitors, all of them, every single one.
So Felicia is, she's a nurse, right? She's working at a hospital, I think. And because it's the end of the world, they have some patients, but like it's starting to dwindle, right? They're getting less and less. People aren't caring about coming in anymore because they think it's the end of the world anyways. And then like it's probably Felicia's last day of work. She doesn't know that, but it ends up being that she comes in.
And one thing worth mentioning is that there's a bunch of graffiti on the wall on her walk to work. That's all about Chuck, saying, "Thanks, Chuck. Chuck for life. We love you, Chuck." All this stuff. And then she goes into work. She talks to her nurse friend. All of the patients have walked out.
Walked out, left.
Yep. But all of the heart monitors are beeping a perfect 75.
But there's nobody on the bed.
But there's no one there. They're just all beeping, every single one of them. And something here, again, I'm really breaking the lines between our sections.
I think it's okay.
Because I want to talk about the music in this section too.
Yeah.
Because the beeping kind of lasts for a bit as the music goes, which I like really enjoyed because it added this other sense of dread as to what's going on. Because I don't think we're at this point yet, but we do cut to a bedridden Tom Hiddleston, Chuck, he's plugged into a heart monitor, beeping at 75, and kind of gives the illusion that he is behind the death of the universe. But before we get there, I want to talk about Carl Lumbly.
Carl?
I don't remember his character's name, but he's the funeral home director, played by Carl Lumbly.
Sam?
Sam. I think it's Sam.
It's Sam.
Which is very distracting because Sam Wilson, anyway. So Marty, on his way to Felicia's home, runs into funeral director Sam. Sam also doesn't know who Chuck is. No idea. But he decides he's walking to some development. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, he's going to see somebody.
But Marty's walking there too, so they walk together. And I don't even honestly remember that much about what they talk about.
Just trying to remember what their conversations were.
Sam's inclusion here is very important to set up later in Act 1 and Act 2, kind of what's going on. I don't think this scene is like super duper important. Could be totally wrong though. But I do know he talks about There's this thing he says where like the days are getting longer. There's one rotation around the sun is taking longer. But I don't remember how exactly that fits in with the end of the world conversation. I think at the time I was like, this is weird. Like it's the end of the world. Maybe that has
I
something
think
to do
it's
with
that
why the days are
days
taking
are
longer.
getting shorter,
Shorter, whatever it is.
so time is literally starting to run out. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was at some point during this walk with Sam is when I realized this is what it ends up being.
That's smart. Took me quite a while to figure out what's going on. I mean, I knew obviously it was connected to Chuck. I kind of thought we were going to go with the route that like Chuck was some godlike being living among the people. Because the thing that got me was, so Marty eventually leaves Sam. And
They get to the edge of the neighborhood, and Sam decides he wants to take a break and have a sit, but Marty wants to get to Felicia.
Marty keeps going. Sam understands. They handshake each other, and Marty walks into the neighborhood, meets this girl on roller skates.
And then this is when the power fully goes out, street lights are out.
Yep. And then all of the windows,
they sort of turn into like TV screens and flash this Thanks Chuck ad again.
And this is where I was like, okay,
Because
Chuck is some sort of cosmic being that is causing the planet to exist, and his death is like, that's it. Like, it's causing the universe to fall apart.
This part is where it definitely starts to feel more supernatural-ish.
Something I want to point out, and like here's where I was really feeling it. The inclusion of Stephen King, like Stephen King wrote this, and Stephen King is a very well-known horror author. And a reason I didn't want to see this movie at first was because I thought it was horror, until other people told me that he doesn't solely write horror. But I gotta say, this Act 3 is actually very terrifying.
It's terrifying in the sense that, like, for most of it, it feels real.
Exactly.
Like, it feels like it could, like, if the actual world we live on was ending, a lot of this is probably how it would happen.
Correct. Like, it's terrifying in the way that it's easy to think we could see it happening. I mean, if you look at the world as it is today, jumping back to the Gus conversation, Gus says, like, and it all started with those protests, and, you know, and then they stormed the White House, and then there was an explosion at a volcano.
Yeah, all the
like,
natural
I don't know if you saw,
disasters.
but a volcano exploded today. So, like, erupted is the better term. But, like, it just unfolds so naturally that it was hard for me to be like, this would
real.
never happen. It's like, oh my God, I can see this happening.
Yeah.
So then, really cool. I love this shot. And this is when I picked up on the beeping during the music, because I think this is where they show Chuck for the first time, or maybe the second time, and the beeping continues.
Yeah, I think this is the second time because we see the family.
Yeah. So then they cut to Chuck a second time, and his son and his daughter, not his daughter, his wife is there. And his wife is basically like,
You can let go.
yeah, like 39 great years. And the son is like, thanks for everything, Chuck. And it's very touching. But then it becomes clear that that's what's on all of the billboards and all the ads. So again, it's very clear that Chuck is behind the death of the universe.
And then we're at the point where Marty makes it to Felicia's. And they kind of go into the backyard and they're looking up at the stars. And you kind of start to see the stars disappear, like one at a time.
And then more quickly. And the sound the stars make when they go out was just...
And they all go out and it fades to black.
Well, one thing. Felicia says, I'm scared. Marty says, I'm scared too. And then Marty says, I love you, as it cuts out. So it's a very abrupt cut to black. We sit on black for a little bit, if I remember correctly.
Which is probably good for people to really feel what just happened.
Yeah. So that entire act just starts out so strong. It's like the perfect hook as to what exactly is going on. And it's just, I mean, it's genius. Dare I say genius? I feel like it's genius.
Honestly, like that in itself could just be like a short story.
I literally just thought that.
I also kind of feel like this act had the least amount of narration.
That's very true.
I don't know if it's like the age.
Because everything about the internet is not told with narration. It's not until he sees the billboard for the first time that Nick Offerman comes in and it's like, Marty was on his way home from work when he saw the billboard for the first time. Like,
Yeah.
That's the first time we hear Nick Offerman. But it is told very well without an overabundance of narration. Yeah. Anything else on Act 3 before we move on?
I don't think so. And then we go into Act 2. This act is called Buskers Forever.
This is my... never mind. I was going to say it's my favorite act, but I think Act 3 is my favorite act.
Really?
Yeah.
Act 3 is in the first act?
Yeah.
Yeah, this might have one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
I was surprised at how short Act 2 was.
Because it's like the predominant act with Tom Hiddleston as Chuck, who's like the face of the movie, but he's like
for him being the
basically-
face of the movie, he's really not in this movie at all. Which I think is just, it's very interesting. Genius way to get us in the chairs.
Yeah.
Good job.
So we open up Act 2, and we see Chuck. He, as an adult, this is an adult Chuck.
Tom Hiddleston, Chuck.
Yes, Tom Hiddleston, not sick and dying in bed, but like out and about. He is in Boston for a banking conference. He's walking through the streets, and he comes across this girl named Taylor playing the drums. She has a drum set set up. She has a hat out for money.
I believe the act opens with Taylor, doesn't it?
It does. It opens with Taylor. We see her set up her drum set, and she's kind of playing. People aren't really like paying her much attention. But then she spots Chuck in the distance. And Chuck starts to walk towards her. And this act also immediately opens with narration. And when Chuck approaches, as almost where he's going to walk past her playing the drums, she kind of changes her beat a little bit, and Chuck pauses. And he looks at her, and we get like a flash of what we later learn. It's a memory for Chuck. The beat reminded him of something.
I want to interject and point out that Taylor is using the cowbell here.
Yes.
And it's on the cowbell strike specifically that he's seeing these flashes.
Yes.
which does come into play later.
Yes, and the flash that it shows is like a wooden spoon hitting the side of a pot, which I guess so the cowbell reminds him of this. So once he hears it, he stops, and Taylor, you kind of see on her face, she's looking at him like, what's this guy gonna do? Probably thinking maybe he'll throw some money in her hat. But then he drops his briefcase and he starts to dance to the beat.
It's a great beat.
It was so great. This entire scene I loved so much. I was grinning so wide just watching him dance to these beats she was making. And then later when I was listening to the soundtrack, you know what this one's called? It's called Joy. This song is called Joy. And I'm like, that is exactly what I felt watching.
I will admit I haven't listened to the soundtrack on Spotify yet, but I was wondering if the drum beats are in the soundtrack.
They are.
That's great news.
And it's so strikingly different from the rest of the soundtrack. But just when I saw that it was titled Joy, I was like, that's exactly what I felt watching this scene.
So, speaking of joy, we're also introduced to another character in this act called Janice, and she had just been dumped by her boyfriend via text, though. Nasty work. But she is walking through the town and stops with a lot of the other crowd to watch Chuck's initial dancing. And eventually, Chuck pulls her in because she starts dancing as well.
She's kind of, a circle sort of starts to form as people are like, whoa, who's this guy? He's actually kind of good. And she like kind of starts to move a little bit on the edge of this circle, and Chuck sees it. So then he's like, waves her in, like, come on, let's dance.
And then the two start dancing. And the majority of Act 2 is just this dance, honestly.
But it's such a good dance.
But it's such a good dance.
I think it's like a 5-minute dance.
Yeah, it's so enjoyable. It's so well choreoed.
Yes.
Wish I knew who the choreo was.
I don't remember, but I have seen a practice video of Tom Hiddleston practicing for this.
But man, he can move.
He does very well. I'm very impressed.
He does a moonwalk.
Yes, he does.
Crazy.
He does pretty much every dance.
Yeah, he doesn't floss.
Well, we might not have had flossing yet. I don't know.
But when it comes to the story and the beats, you can see immediately that Taylor's anger, Janice's anger kind of fades away as she just dances with Chuck here.
Yes.
Now, we have to point out that Chuck does momentarily get a headache during the dance.
Yes, he pauses and like looks down for a minute and kind of grabs at the side of his head. And they ask him, are you okay? What's wrong? Or something. He's like, nothing. And then he keeps dancing.
Is this where the narrator says it's 9 months before his death, but he doesn't know that yet?
Correct.
So we now have a timeline that he's going to die in 9 months. But
he doesn't know it yet.
He doesn't know it yet. So the dancing is over. Everyone wants an encore. Taylor says you got to quit when you're ahead. And Janice and Chuck help pack up. They go off to this beautiful, serene little park area. Great shot. But they split the profits. Taylor wants to split the profits with them because she made so much money. And she asks Chuck why he stopped to dance.
And Chuck says he's not sure.
I forget exactly what the narrator says here.
I think ultimately, Chuck knew why he stopped. He just
didn't want to actually.
Didn't want to say it. Didn't want to get deep. Maybe. But just kind of leaves it at that.
But then the three hug and they go their separate ways. Something we didn't actually talk about in Act 1 that comes up again here in Act 2 is when the world is ending, the characters all kind of just say, like, that sucks. Like, that really sucks. But what are you going to do? Like, the world is ending and it seems like we're going down with it, I think is like a line that Felicia says, whoa, I just had an epiphany.
What?
I just had an epiphany.
An alive epiphany.
Yeah.
Please
Anyway.
share. Can't share yet?
Can't share it yet.
Okay. One thing I do want to point out, at the very beginning of the dance, when Chuck first invites Janice in, he says something like, "Let's go, little sister," or "Let's dance, little sister." And we do learn in the final act why he said those words, but I think it also served as a purpose to establish that this isn't a romantic relationship. Chuck has a wife and a child. This is just a random encounter with a stranger, but little sister, I think, almost defines the dancing relationship.
Also established in the by the narrator that he has a wife and a child already.
Yes.
So, and then Chuck and Janice talk about the breakup, and Chuck specifically says, "That sucks." And Janice is like, "Yeah, well, seems like the world is ending and we're just all going down with it," which is a strange thing to say.
And then as Chuck is leaving, he sees the same little girl we saw before on rollerblades, also on rollerblades.
And also the male nurse is sitting at a table. So that's interesting. And a line that's said by the narrator here when he's talking, it's near the end of Act 2. He's talking about that Chuck will, in 9 short months, be going through a lot of pain, and he'll be wondering why God made the planet or made the world. And the narrator says, then he'll remember that that is why God made the world. Just that. Talking about the dancing.
Yeah.
That line.
I think it's not just the dancing. I think it's also specifically this dance with a stranger on the beat and dancing with a stranger and
that moment of joy was, I mean, I almost sobbed right there at that line. That line hit me so hard. I was like, dang.
Yeah.
But.
And that's the end of Act 2.
Yep. So he's seeing these people that we see later in Act 3. It's really starting to build here. But as you can probably hear, if you, again, this is spoiler filled, so you've probably already seen the movie or know the story, but Act 1 and Act 2 are very different in terms of tone.
Yes.
But I do think they share this underlying sadness to them that ties them together quite well.
Yes, because at the end of Act 1/Act 3, the first one that we see, we realize Chuck dies. And so now we're introduced to Chuck while he's alive and before he knows he's dying. And so you already know what the outcome is going to be. So it's a little bittersweet.
So, and then we move on to Act 1. titled I Contain Multitudes. And this opens, this is the longest act by far.
Which this act is still in the overall in reverse chronological order, but it's Chuck as a child, but we start with him as a young child and then going into like early 20s.
Correct. I think that's a good thing to talk about because when I heard that it was in chronological order,
What are you thinking?
I thought like the whole thing was backwards, but each of the acts do follow a forward timeline.
Yes.
It's just the 3 acts
are
reverse
of Chuck's like
Yeah.
overall life.
So it opens with Chuck as a very young child. But his father and mother, who's pregnant with a sister, all perish in a car accident. And then he goes to live with his grandparents, Albie and Sarah. Sarah is played by who's Sarah played by? Mia Sarah, yeah. I was like, that can't be right. And then Albie is played by Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Whenever I said in Act 1 that,
Oh.
yeah.
All right. Yep. I agree.
If Mark Hamill in this is so good as
good.
Albie. And unlike Marty as a character, Albie is in a lot of the movie.
Yes.
Like he's in most of Act 1, which is the longest act. So Mark Hamill really gets to shine here.
Yeah. It's also one of those, like the acting is like so good that like you don't even realize this is Mark Hamill.
I honestly didn't realize it was him the first
Right. For
5
so
minutes of the
long.
act.
Like he does so well playing this character.
But, phew. So basically, the household is really depressed. Albie goes and turns to alcoholism, and even Sarah is a little depressed for a bit until Sarah starts to liven up, and she starts dancing and listening to music while cooking dinner, cooking in general.
Which I like. This is just probably, I don't know if it's a small detail, but I like that they're showing that, like, I almost see it as a way for her to cope is through the music and the dance. And we begin to learn that these are the flashbacks that Chuck was having of the wooden spoon hitting the pot. Is him dancing in the kitchen with his grandmother as she's cooking.
They even frame it kind of the same way. The shots that we see in the flashbacks are shots from this section.
Yes.
But Chuck slowly begins to learn how to dance with his grandmother, Sarah, and Albie continues to drink.
And it's also during this time, which I actually think we get a scene of this door in one of the other acts.
We do. It's in Act 1 or
Okay.
Act 3. It's in Marty's
Yes.
house in Act 3 is this exact house.
Yes. And there's a point where Albie kind of looks up this set of stairs and it shows us this door with a lock on it. But Marty never addresses this door with the lock on it, so we're just kind of it's left unfinished. But in this act, we learn that this is like, I don't know how to say this word. Cupola, basically like the attic sort of the house, and Albie puts a lock on this door and tells Chuck he's never to go in there.
Because the floor is bad.
The floor is bad, But we're learning that Albie is becoming a drunk. And when he's drunk, doesn't keep his mouth shut. So then he starts to tell Chuck that he sees ghosts in there.
To which Sarah basically tells Chuck that if Albie ever says that he saw people before they died, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he just drinks too much. So it does seem like they're trying to
Hide something.
hide something.
Yeah.
But then we jump to the title of this act, where at school, Miss Richards,
Chuck's teacher.
English teacher, I would assume, is reading Song of Myself from Walt Whitman, and Chuck has a question to her about the line, I contain multitudes, which of course is the name of Act 1. And when I tell you, this is when it clicked for me. Yep. This is when it clicked for me. So, do you want to explain? This is a big moment. I feel like you're better at explaining things than me, so maybe you should explain this.
So, I contain multitudes. She basically explains to Chuck that every person he meets, everything he experiences, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem at that time, it still gets put into his brain. And so she's telling him that, like, this whole other world is inside of him and his mind, which is then reflected in the third/first original act that we see following Marty, and that was his mind. So it's saying that each person's mind contains their own world, and that's where we get multitudes.
Well explained.
Thanks.
This was such a crazy moment for me because all I could think about was the fictional world I know I have in my head. And like, while I say it's fictional, there's people in there that are not fictional, you know what I mean? So that was that's all I thought about for like a solid 5 minutes, and then I was like, I need to get back into this movie.
See, I had already like realized this entire thing like in the first, third, whatever act. Once we realize that that is in like Chuck's mind and he dies, and so that world dies. I had already realized it then. I didn't realize how much it would come back to this act, but it also struck me because I remember as a kid playing with dolls in a dollhouse and thinking like, I'm controlling these dolls, so they have no idea. Like, so is there somebody controlling me? And I have no idea. So that was just like a crazy moment for me. And when she's explaining this, you contain multitudes to Chuck, it also made me think of like, the scientists say when you dream, you can't make up a face or a person. It is somebody you have seen at some point in your life, even if you don't remember it.
I also thought about this.
And so I just thought, like, it makes sense.
Yep. It's a crazy true. I just don't think it's something that we as people think about a lot, but I do think that everyone in the world like touches you in some way, even if there's some random person walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like, it's so interesting, and it's such a good pickup of human nature, I feel like.
Yeah, it also makes me think of like I think of like random memories that I have throughout my life, even with like people I haven't talked to in maybe 20 years or 15 years, and I'm like, they probably don't even remember that moment, but like I do. So it's just crazy, like what the mind hangs on to, and yeah.
which I'm going to talk about the some people don't remember things, but you do section. Because something that I've been thinking about for a very long time is now that we're at this part and we can talk about the previous two acts in terms of what they are, it kind of bothered me that seemingly the people that don't, that mean the most to him are not present in this alternate world. But I think that's purposeful. Because I think when he is dying, he's not thinking of, like, he himself is not thinking that he had an impact on anyone. So that's why he's going with the people that are being like, I don't know who this person is, even though they all do. They all have crossed paths with him before, right? And it's not like the teacher who had an impact on him and who he probably had an impact on her, because we saw she's like not doing great after that class because no one would listen, but Chuck comes up and talks to her. And you could see the way her smile brightened as he was trying to learn more. So he touched her just as much as she touched him in that moment. And I think it's an interesting detail that the people probably most touched by him were not the ones in that fictional world. I don't know what it means exactly, but they're hinted at. There's a lot of people that are combined into numerous, like this teacher.
Like obviously a teacher was important to him.
Right.
So like then in the final act, Marty is a teacher.
Right. But Marty's already a teacher. We know that because it's revealed in Act 1. But I think he kind of combines Marty as a teacher and her as a teacher into one, because we don't know if Marty teaches English, but in his world, Marty teaches English, and he's teaching Walt Whitman.
Yes.
So like that's a combine. The epiphany I had X minutes ago was, I've heard a theory that he starts living in his fake world after the first headache in the movie, which doesn't tie into this at all, actually, but because I was trying to figure out where Janice was in the fake world, but I think Janice and Karen Gillan's character are merged into one. The only one really absent now is Taylor.
Could Taylor be the bank lady?
Maybe. It's possible.
I don't know.
But, so yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. But before we get there, we have to go through some terrible tragedies. Sarah, his grandmother, dies in the supermarket, which forces Albie into even worse alcoholism. And Chuck obviously is, that's jarring. He's sad. But he, once again, tries to cope, just like Sarah did, by joining a dance class.
At his school, he sees a flyer.
Yeah. This is another one that I feel like this teacher... Again, I think this teacher, though, touched him and he touched her in the same way. So, like, where's this teacher?
I almost feel like maybe her bluntness is kind of reminiscent of the neighbor. Maybe.
Maybe.
I also feel like maybe there's some things where it's up to your interpretation.
Yeah, 100%. This is, I feel like, an interpretive movie in a way.
So Chuck joins this after-school dance program. It's called Twirlers and Spinners. And it quickly becomes apparent that not only is he one of the best male dancers, he's one of the best dancers out of all of them.
Mm-hmm. He's into this girl, Kat McCoy, who's the best girl dancer. Mm-hmm. And they're frequently partnered together because he's really good and she's really good. Mm-hmm. One day after, or during a break at the club, Chuck, in an effort to impress her, does the moonwalk. Mm-hmm. And then he teaches all of the dance class, including the teacher,
how to moonwalk.
That was such a fun scene.
Mm-hmm. And they're so impressed that Kat tells Chuck that they should do the dance at their upcoming fall fling.
And Chuck is excited about this and talks to Albie about it. And Albie is not thrilled.
Yeah. So Albie is an accountant.
Which, as we know, is what Chuck becomes in Act 2.
Yeah. So Albie is telling Chuck basically the age-old story of, you know, theater or dance or music. The arts isn't going to take you anywhere. You need something solid, like numbers and math.
I gotta give it, again, to the writing here, because his little monologue was so good. Mm-hmm. Like, when he was talking about how the arts is just math, mm-hmm. I, was floored. I was listening to it, and I was just thinking, he's right. Because you do. Everything, you count numbers. When I'm playing piano, I'm counting numbers. When you're dancing, he's right. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. So that was great. It was so good.
So good that it discourages Chuck a little bit. He's starting to second guess dancing a bit.
When does Albie fall asleep, which lets Chuck open the cupola?
I feel like this is after.
Because it's not after the dance. It's before.
No, I know. It might be like sometime after she dies, after Sarah dies, because she's definitely not there anymore, and it's shown that his alcoholism is getting worse.
So then he's asleep.
Yes. So while he's asleep, Chuck steals the keys to the cupola, the attic. And he unlocks the door. And I feel like he just barely has it pushed open when Albie is at the bottom of the stairs and yells at him. Like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, Mark Hamill jump scare, by the way.
Yeah, he's pretty angry. So angry that Chuck is scared. And Albie comes storming up the steps. And Albie looks into the room. And he freezes as if he sees a ghost. And when he does that, he kind of shoves Chuck.
Shoves Chuck back.
And Chuck goes. I don't think, does he fall? I didn't fall all the way down the stairs, but
he falls down it's like an L-shaped stair.
Okay, so he
falls down the first stairs.
A few stairs, and he just looks up and sees Albie frozen in fear almost.
Grabbing his arm.
He grabs his arm.
It's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's a very subtle arm grab.
And I think Chuck says something, and it kind of snaps Albie out of it. And Albie hurries up and shuts the door and locks it, and then
kind of has a breakdown. He's like, I'm sorry. You can't see that. I'm sorry. It again, Mark Hamill, the way he switched from like really angry to sad in that scene was just he was so good. So then the dance comes, and this again. So this is after the accounting talk. So Chuck doesn't actually really want to dance,
Yeah.
and much to Kat's
Dismay.
dismay, and the dance teacher is like, because he's telling everyone he's hurt his leg. She's like, I've seen hurt legs. You're fine. Don't lie about it. If you don't want to dance with her, just tell her. She's a tough girl. She can take it. And again, just a beautiful scene here where he steps outside. He's looking up at the stars. A little shooting star falls. And I think he kind of realizes that he wants to dance. And I think he's thinking of his grandmother. And he goes in and he starts dancing with Kat. It's great. Everyone loves it. It's revealed that Marty and Felicia are there cheering for him. The other teachers are cheering. Everyone's cheering. Kat's boyfriend is not cheering.
There's another flash, sort of, at the end of this scene, to Tom Hiddleston's Chuck, and we learn he has a scar on his hand. And we learned that he had told his wife that he got it after this dance from Kat's boyfriend, because he was mad that Chuck was dancing with Kat. But we learned that's not the case.
Because after he's kissed, he goes outside and he's just dancing outside. Another great sequence.
Yeah, he's just so happy. He's like frolicking across the football field.
And Tom Hiddleston has a voiceover while he's dancing, where he is saying his lines of "I am wonderful, I deserve to be wonderful, and I contain multitudes," as Chuck accidentally scratches his hand on the fence, which creates that scar. And it goes back to Tom Hiddleston, and his wife is like, why don't you just tell me the truth? And that's when the narrator says that Chuck knows why he never said the truth. It's because that scratch meant more to him than any other like random scratch on anyone else's body. So what does that mean? Well, Albie, unfortunately, passes away. He has a heart attack.
A few years later.
A few years later, yeah, correct. But it kind of jumps. Like, that's the
It
last.
does jump, yes.
Him scratching his hand is the last we see of young Chuck.
Yes.
And then we jump. I have to talk about casting real quick.
Okay, we now have teenage Chuck.
Yes. So, young Chuck, both young Chucks. Shout out Cody Flanagan as 7-year-old Chuck. He looked good when in comparison to Benjamin Pajak as 11-year-old Chuck. The two of them were almost spot on casting.
Was Flanagan his son?
Yes.
The director's son?
Yes, correct.
Hey, we only see him for
Yeah, like 30 seconds.
when he's very young and his parents die.
But what really blew me away with casting was Benjamin Pajak to Jacob Tremblay. That cut, it's not a cut. You don't see them on screen together. It's a picture
11-year-old
first.
Chuck to teenage Chuck.
Is such good casting. They look almost identical. It's crazy.
It is very crazy. I saw a shot that shows those two and then Tom Hiddleston almost from like
Is it the poster?
side view. Yeah, it might be a poster.
Is it that poster?
Yes, this
Yeah,
one.
that
And it's
poster.
like it's such good casting. Like even just like the angle of the cheek is spot on. It's very good.
But anyway, so we cut to we don't cut. It fades to a picture of teenage Chuck, and then it fades to him in the funeral home where we meet Sam again.
Yes, the funeral director from the third/first act is still a funeral
Still a
home
funeral
director.
home director.
And the same guy.
Yeah. Also worth noting, he doesn't smoke a pipe here, but Albie smoked a pipe.
Yes.
And he smoked a pipe in the opening in Act 1, Act 3. Sam did.
Yes.
So it does kind of seem like Albie and Sam were merged into
Yes.
one character.
And we find out that Albie, is this where we find out how he died?
So we get his stuff, like we get all of his belongings.
Personal belongings from Sam.
Yep. And then Chuck goes up to the
Attic.
whatever that place was called.
Yes, the locked attic.
Yep.
Also, it's worth mentioning that Chuck is still a teenager. He does not want to uproot his life, though, and he wants to finish out school at his high school. So his other grandparents decided they will move in with him so that he can finish out high school here. But before they move in, Chuck meets with Sam, the funeral director, to get all of Albie's personal effects that were on him. And in these personal effects is the key to the locked attic.
So he unlocks it, and there's nothing in there at first.
It's not even a finished room. It's just bare bones.
And the floor is sturdy.
Yeah, it's a little humorous. Chuck takes cautious first steps into the room, worried that he's gonna fall through.
Jacob Tremblay played that so funny. But when he goes to turn around, he hears the familiar beep
Of the heart monitor.
of the heart monitor at 75. And he turns around.
And he sees a man laying in a hospital bed. And we look at his hand, and there's the scar.
There's the scar.
The same scar that Chuck has, because it is Chuck.
It is Chuck. And this is where it kind of all comes together for Chuck. He realizes that every time Albie has been in that room, he has seen someone's death. So,
And this goes back to when Chuck is pushed down the stairs by Albie when he tries to go in when he's a kid, and he sees Albie grab at his arm and in fear. And then we later learn Albie died of a heart attack. Albie was literally seeing himself dying that moment.
because when we watch him die in the movie, he grabs his arm, just as he did when he viewed that apparition. And again, I think the narrator has a line here that I shouldn't have even brought up because now it has completely slipped to my mind.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah. But
I do think this part is also interesting because earlier in the movie, there's a moment where Albie's drunk. Sarah hasn't passed away yet, but he starts to slip up about what is up in this room, and he's mentioning ghosts. And so he mentions seeing other deaths, not just his own, in this room, which I think is an intriguing part of this. Like, you don't just see your own death.
Well, he sees 3 others, according to the narrator.
Yes.
Sees that one kid, then that other kid.
Very specific.
I don't really want to get into how they died.
Right. Okay.
Because the one is not an outside force. And then the third, like, it's implied that he saw Sarah's death. That he knew it was going to happen. The waiting is the hardest part. That is the line that I wanted to talk about. And I don't remember who said it. It might have been Albie, actually.
I think it was Albie. And I think he was talking about himself.
Maybe. But I think the narrator says it again when Chuck realizes that it's Chuck. And the narrator's like, he thought of what Albie used to tell him. The waiting is the hardest part. Because he knows now. He doesn't know when. But he knows he's going to die. And like, I think that's interesting because it's obvious to be like, yeah, we're all going to die. But it's also obvious that we don't know when we're going to die.
Or how.
Or how. And I think it's something to think about in terms of it's easy for us to sit here and be like, we have a long life ahead of us.
But you never know.
Yeah, we don't know that. We don't have the luxury, if that's the right word, of seeing a vision of ourselves.
That's true. Like, Chuck at least knew roughly how old he might be based off of that. This, I think, is also one of probably maybe the more supernatural parts of this story. And like thinking about this attic, just like it makes me have so many questions that I think are left unanswered on purpose. I think this is a part where it's really the why or the how this happens isn't the important part.
Exactly.
It's that what do you do with this information?
So, young Chuck then.
He's obviously initially like, oh my gosh. But like, then the words from his teacher, he remembers them. And he says them out loud.
I'm wonderful. I deserve to be wonderful. And I contain multitudes. And then he leaves the room.
And he leaves the door open.
And the movie ends. Should clarify, the vision of him dissipates. It actually doesn't dissipate, it just cuts off. Like it disappears immediately. There's no cool effect or anything, it's just gone.
Is there like a shot cut?
I think it cuts to behind, or to...
It shows a different shot.
I think it cuts to behind his head. And it's gone or something like that.
Like as he's saying these words.
I think it's right before.
Right before?
I think it's right before. Could I be wrong? Yes. I don't exactly remember. This was when I was having an emotional breakdown. Because I need to talk about the shot composition is not really the right word here because it's an empty room. But the creative decision to have the empty room be on screen during the credits.
Yes. He leaves the room and it's just the empty room for the entire length of the credits as like the background, where it normally would be black. It's just this room in exactly the same shot that it was when he left. And I don't know if it was the specific like group of people that were also seeing this movie at the same time as us. A lot of them were older, married couples, but nobody moved. the credits rolled. Nobody moved for the entire length of the credits. We didn't even look at each other.
Nope. I stared at the screen.
We were frozen.
I was having an emotional breakdown. I talked about it the night of, but I'll reiterate it here for the people listening. I used to play in an orchestra, and there was a song we did, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the fourth movement.
Shout out Beethoven.
Shout out Beethoven. I'll never forget our conductor told us that when we finish the song, when we are done, the people aren't going to clap right away. If they clap right away, you did something wrong. When you play this piece right, there's going to be silence. You like that silence. You soak in that silence because it means they're in awe of what they just witnessed. And I just thought of that because I was like, nobody has moved a muscle. That's how hard that movie hit everyone there.
Yeah, like they weren't even like really talking to each other or like starting to gather. Nobody moved.
Not a muscle.
Also, the song for the credits it's based off the Irish folk song "The Parting Glass." It's essentially the same song. It just has some more fully English lyrics and less of the Irish accents to it. But I love that song. I don't know I didn't know of the guy that sang this version, but Ed Sheeran does a really great version. I would recommend looking up. But it was like the perfect song to have rolling through those credits. It's all acoustic, and the song is basically about like somebody leaving, as Chuck just left, as Chuck left forever in the beginning of the movie. It was great song choice for right there.
So yeah, it ends beautifully, and I honestly can't think of a way that I think this ending could be any better. So yeah, so when we look back, everything kind of in the third act makes more sense. A lot of things are said that other characters say. Something we didn't talk about was like Albie talks to Chuck about the days getting shorter before. So like Sam's whole thing in the third act about the days getting shorter again kind of reinforces that Albie and Sam had some sort of merging there.
I also kind of, with the merging and stuff, feel like this final world inside Chuck's head that we see in the third/first act is like similar to how, at least for me, how I dream. Like it'll be people from real life that I know, but like they're doing things they wouldn't do in real life. And that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah, so that's basically a full plot rundown
With parts
with
of
the script and characters,
but also themes.
and some cinematography and some themes,
some
and
sound.
some score and some sound. So we kind of nailed it all a little bit. Is there any other thing that you wanted to say specifically about anything that we may have missed?
I do have one. It's not a negative.
Oh yeah, I had a nitpick I want to talk about.
It's just one thing that I don't understand is that Chuck sees that he's going to die, right? And he's like, I'm wonderful, I deserve to be wonderful, and I contain multitudes, as like basically saying that's okay, I'm gonna keep living life, pushing on. And I wonder why he decides to become an accountant and not do something with dance. Like, dance makes him the happiest, so I would expect, like, this whole idea that life is short theme would, like, encourage him to want to do dance.
Is it because he hurt himself during dance, maybe?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just genuinely asking. That's a great question. You should ask Stephen King.
Stephen King, if you're listening, please comment below.
Stephen King is not listening.
You never know.
Plot twist, Stephen King is our first commenter.
If you know Stephen King, tag him in the comments.
Yeah, the only other thing, I don't know if, I guess it's script, maybe direction. I felt like it's a little bit heavy-handed in terms of the themes. It kind of tells you exactly what's going on. But as I said, I had counter arguments to my own argument here. Number one, I myself did not understand what was going on until they straight up told me what was going on. I did not figure it out.
Oh, see, I figured it out.
Yeah, well, I did not. I was still confident that Chuck himself was a cosmic entity that was controlling the world.
Do you partially think that because you only knew that it was a Stephen King story?
Yeah, I know very little about Stephen King stories, actually. The only one I'm even remotely familiar with is It. And I know there's a giant cosmic turtle in It. And I know he likes his cosmic entities.
Okay.
So I did genuinely think that, like, Chuck was actually like God or something.
Stephen King has his, like, more niche stories that aren't like these super crazy things. The biggest one people mention is Shawshank Redemption.
Yep, I heard that. I didn't even know that was Stephen King.
Well, now you know.
Now I know.
Put that on your watch list.
But my second counter argument is that even with the movie straight up telling you what's going on, there were still plenty of people I saw online afterwards not understanding what was going on.
Yes. I saw some reviews of people on TikTok being like, did we just watch the same movie? Because I wasn't vibing with any of that. And I'm like, how?
So it's easy for me to sit here and be like, it's really heavy-handed. Because I do think I would have eventually figured out what was going on. Because I had an inkling in the second act when he started seeing people. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, there might be something else going on here. But when they straight up said it, I was like, okay, no, that makes sense. And I wasn't like mad that it took me that long. I was like, no, this makes sense. But a lot of people still have yet to get it. So maybe it wasn't as heavy-handed as I think. But
Right. Like when we had finished watching it, you had said that him repeating the "I contain multitudes" phrase wasn't needed. Right? That's what you had said.
Yep.
I disagreed, and I said I think it fit very well. But obviously, some people didn't get it.
Well, something can fit well and still be unneeded.
That's true, but I don't think it like overdid or anything.
No.
I thought it was perfect.
I'm still not positive it was needed, but I also like the inclusion of it. I want to make that very clear. I like the inclusion. That line is what made me tear up at the end, but I still don't think it's needed. But maybe it is. I don't really know. So.
Did you have any other critiques?
No, that was basically my only one. As I said, not normally a big narrator fan because I think it's a lot of telling instead of showing. But in this scenario, I think it made sense.
Yeah, I don't mind narration. I have TV shows and stuff that have narration that I'm a pretty big fan of. One thing with the narration in this one is that the narrator isn't a character. And I think that is on purpose.
Yep. It's just, they just tell. The other movie that I don't mind the narration is Barbie for a different reason, because the narrator in Barbie, well, not exactly what you mean. The narrator in Barbie like is a character because she goes off script a lot. But in this one is perfect. So
We didn't really talk about cinematography or visuals.
I mean, I did.
Well, okay.
I talked at length about how I loved some of the shot compositions. Anything outside made me cry. Like, quite literally anything outside.
Yeah, I feel like there was also like I don't want to say vintage-y vibe, but like kind of vintage, kind of reminded me of like a 90s style movie. Kind of similar to The Holdovers.
Holdovers does it better than this.
But like it feels a little throwback-ish. Another thing I learned, which I did not pick out watching it, and this is one reason why I would like to re-see it. I was watching an interview with the director, and the person doing the interview mentioned this to him, and he was like, I'm so glad somebody realized this because not many people had. But the aspect ratio changes with every act. And he said it'll do it regardless of if you're seeing it in the theater or at home. And so it will get narrower as Chuck gets older. And so in the theater, it starts out very wide, big. Second act, it goes in this way. And then the third act, this
It gets
way.
narrow as Chuck gets older.
Yes.
So wouldn't that be reverse?
Sorry, I meant when he's a child, it's wide. When we see him, like in the dance scene, it's kind of in the middle. And when we see him in the hospital, it's very narrow. That's on a horizontal level in theater. But he said when you watch it on your TV at home, it'll be the opposite effect. So it's going to be vertically getting narrower.
Can't believe I didn't notice that.
I know.
I'm
I think it's subtle, but it's there.
like so much a fan of aspect ratio changes. I can't believe I didn't notice that. I was probably trying too hard to understand what was going on.
Well, I was trying to think back if I noticed it. And I do feel like the dance scene felt like very squared to me. Like remembering it, it felt very squared. So I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But a subtle detail.
But yeah, that's interesting. But I really like the cinematography here. I mean, I think it's also, as I said, a very pretty film. Like, just the visual of the empty room while the credits rolled just seals the deal. But yeah, I mean, score we talked about too for a bit. The drum beat itself makes this such a good score. I don't think it's going to win any awards or anything, but I think it does its job well. I think it adds so much emotional weight where needed.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the score outside of the dance drum scene, because that's very different from the rest of the score. Like in the beginning, it's very, like the resonance is high. We have these long drawn out chords. Where I think when we see Chuck younger, it's lighter. It's still very like mellow sounding, almost like what you would think you would hear at like a spa. It's like relaxing. It's easy to listen to. It's almost sounds like something you might meditate to.
Okay.
But then towards the end, obviously, like the end, when I say end, I mean like as Chuck dying. So the end of the world, it's still very much similar to that, but like it's much heavier and like you feel the weight.
That's where it really stood out to me the most, is specifically the scene where they're outside looking at the stars. That piece of the score, I like audibly remember. And then I want to say the ending of the movie I also audibly remember. I think, I said it earlier, but the inclusion of the beats,
From
the heartbeat monitor in the music, I don't know if it's in the soundtrack that way, but the sound editing to bleed that over was such a genius decision. Yeah.
Any themes, legacy, or standout moments?
Well, we already talked about the themes, I feel like, pretty at length, but we can always do it more. I think I am one, and admittedly it's not every day, but I'm one that I try to live my life with joy, and I really try to bring joy to others for as often as I can. And like I said, I'm not perfect. I don't do it every day. But this movie just spoke to me because it's about joy. It's about living life. I'm a sucker for living life movies.
Yeah. It's about realizing what really matters.
Not our phones, not the internet, not our computers. Human interaction, human one-on-one interaction.
Yes.
That is why Act 3, while feeling so different, works so well as part of this movie, because that's what it's telling you. The world as a whole doesn't matter. Make relationships, make friendships,
Connections.
touch someone, let them touch you, not physically.
With consent. But I think it's also about like, even like one of the big things for me, and I think it's also why the dance scene made me so happy, is like having connection with a complete stranger. Like it reminded me of like, it's like this feeling of like when you're at like a sports game and like something amazing happens for your team and the whole stadium is cheering. It's like you're all feeling the same thing and you don't know each other. And it's like you're just going to turn and like high five some strangers. Or I don't know. I also get, this is probably a weird one. I don't know if everybody will get this. I get the same feeling at a gas station at like 6 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so I don't know why. Gas stations at like 6 a.m. in the morning make me kind of happy. Because like we're all here for the same purpose, to like fuel up, get some food or coffee before work. But like a gas station at 6 a.m. is so busy. But like we're all here for the same purpose. I don't know. Like I said, not everybody will get it. But
The face I'm giving Allison right now. If you get that, drop it in the comments. But yes, I think it's trying to tell us that, like you said, we already have a connection with strangers, whether we take that leap forward or not, you know?
yeah, and I also think like with the dance scene, I keep coming back to it, but it's so good. No words are ever said between Taylor, the drummer, Chuck, except for when he says, "Let's go, little sister." No words are ever said. Like it's nonverbal communication. and it's like almost like to me like when you're like say you're in line at a grocery store or something and like something ridiculous is happening and you kind of like catch the eye of somebody else in line and like they make a face and you get it. Like it's so easy to have connection. But at the same time so hard.
Yep. But, you know, find joy in your life. And the biggest theme, I would say, is exactly as it said. You're wonderful.
You deserve to be wonderful.
To be wonderful. And you have multitudes.
If I think about that too long, it makes me emotional.
Yep, me too. So, you have any standout moments?
A lot. And let's do a standout moment for each act.
For each act?
Yeah, do you have one for each act?
Yeah.
Why did you act like that? Was ridiculous.
Well, I didn't, but then I immediately thought of one.
Okay. What is one for the third, what we see first act?
For the third act, I gotta give it to the very ending. Actually, you'll find an immediate theme with all of my favorite moments.
So it's the ending of each
it's
act?
the ending of each act.
Okay.
Which I feel like is kind of a cop-out answer, but
like that's the purpose.
yeah, like each of them did exactly what they needed to do to stand out for me as one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Okay.
Watching the stars explode and hearing the stars explode was such a cool cinematic experience, like very breathtaking.
Yes.
And then Marty saying "I love you" before it cuts off. Knife to the heart.
I think my standout moment for the first/third act, I don't want to say the moment I realized what was happening because it wasn't exactly like what was happening that made me realize it. I just had finally started to add some things up. But maybe the monologue about the universe. That was pretty great. Even if I think about that too hard now, it sends me spiraling a little bit. For the second act, I would probably say the dance scene is just so good.
For me, again, it's the ending. It's a line. It's just the line. The line hit me so crazy, and still, although I can't remember the exact line.
You just remembered it before we started.
I know, I had to look it up. But the idea behind the line is what gets me.
It's about purpose.
Yeah, that is why God made the world. Just that. Again, just caught me so emotional.
And it's referencing like this just random interaction.
Spontaneous moment of pure joy. Yeah. Third act.
The third act might be the very ending for me when he says the line for the last time.
Yep. Because again, I'll always remember that line. So it's just told. The way it's told is so well done. Each of the acts builds to that final climactic moment. And it's just,
And I feel like maybe a reason why people enjoy this movie so much is that like throughout this whole story of Chuck's life, like some pretty crappy things happen to him, especially like from a young age. Like before he's even out of high school, he's lost basically 4 parents. That's crazy. But somehow, through even all this badness, this kid continues on. And I think that is like what resonates with people, that like even in a bad situation, like you can still have good come out of it.
continues on and continues to believe he's wonderful too. Because I think a lot of people, when bad things happen, have a tendency to blame themselves and think that, they're the problem. But Chuck is saying, I'm not the problem. Things happen. I'm wonderful.
Yeah. And it also makes me think, like, he remembers that phrase just from, like, his middle school English teacher. Like, I wonder how many other Chucks are out in the world that remember one thing from, like, their high school football coach or something.
As I said, we all have those people that touch us.
And they don't even realize.
They don't even realize.
But it's kind of sad, but great at the same time.
So,
Final rating.
Where does it stand for you, legacy-wise?
I knew about halfway through the movie that this was at least going to be a 4 for me. And ultimately, I gave it a 4.5. I will probably see it again sometime, but not something I would rewatch like a million times.
Absolutely love it. I will probably watch it again just to try to piece together all of the references to real life and the fake world in Act 3. That's something I really am interested in, trying to figure out how it all fits together. And I don't know, I could see myself coming back and watching it every couple of years or something like that, or if I'm like really feeling down or whatever. As I said in my initial thoughts, I love this movie. I think it's a great movie. I think it's almost perfect. I had that one nitpick that I can counter-argue on my own. So because of that, I am going to say it's a 5 for me. 5 out of 5.
Whoa. It was a very well-rounded movie, I think.
Yeah, making that my second 5 out of 5 for the year.
Sinners.
It's only June, so.
Wow.
2 through 6 months is actually pretty good for me. Because I tend to give a lot of crazy things.
He goes
5.
high.
I think
the fact that I already have a 5 and 2 4.5s is crazy for me because I tend to be in the middle ground usually.
I think I gave 7 things a 5 last year, so.
Me?
Me.
You? Okay, I was going to say, I think I gave like maybe 2 things a 5.
No, I said I. Some of them probably should not have been 5s, but it is what it is.
Check us out on Letterboxd if you have one.
Yeah, check us out on Letterboxd. Although we don't have a post-credits commentary Letterboxd.
I'll make one.
So there you have it for Life of Chuck. Comment down below your ratings, anything you thought we missed. Did you like the movie? Did you not like it? It's a good discussion.
And if you're liking what we're doing with this podcast, give us a follow, give us a like, let us know your thoughts. Also, we now have an Instagram page. Check us out on Instagram.
So now we're going to head into another segment of trailer talk. Is that what we're calling it?
Trailer talk.
Trailer talk. So we once again picked out 3 trailers that have come out recently. One of them is a little further away, but we definitely need to talk about it. It's going to be the first one we talk about. The Wicked for Good trailer has finally
dropped.
It's about 3 minutes long.
I have been waiting for this for so long, but also after watching it, I'm glad it didn't come out earlier because it means I don't have to wait as long.
That's true. So what did you think of the Wicked for Good trailer?
It was amazing. We watched it for the first time together after recording the last episode. And it got me so excited. I'm just so excited. It immediately made me want to go back and start binge listening to the Wicked soundtrack again.
That's what I did immediately afterwards, actually. For me, I think it's a really solid trailer. It got me excited. I didn't love it the first watch, and then I watched it a second time with headphones, and it was awesome. I think I was just surprised that they used For Good in the marketing.
I thought it was so good though.
Right, which shouldn't surprise me because they used Defying Gravity in the first one, which I was totally cool with. So once I got over that, I was like, yeah, no, this makes sense.
They give us a lot with this trailer.
Yeah, so this is another thing I want to talk about, which I kind of love this. I really like this idea. I know some people don't, and I get it. But like they did the same thing with Wicked 1, the first Wicked, where they dropped like a Super Bowl ad that like really didn't give us a lot. It was just like, look how pretty this movie is. And then the main trailer was like 3 minutes long. And that was kind of it. That's kind of all they gave us. That 3 minute long trailer. A lot of people complained it like said too much of the plot, and it was admittedly kind of a recap of the whole story. But it's hard.
I feel like it gives you a little taste of a lot of things.
But yes, I think the second trailer did the same thing, where some people have claimed it has
too
spoiled
much.
something already, and I
But let's
don't
not
think they're correct.
but let's not forget this is already a Broadway show.
Exactly.
We know the plot.
So I'm almost wondering if movie studios can take an idea from this, and instead of doing like 2 trailers and a teaser trailer, like maybe we just start dropping 30-second trailers and then one longer 3-minute trailer.
Which I feel like this one kind of did. A couple days before the trailer dropped, they released this quick thing. Just it's like a close up of like each character now, and just like them like moving just briefly, like their head or something. And that is like a real teaser to me. Like you're just getting this glimpse of where they are now with no context of the story.
But then they ruined it immediately because then they released a 15-second trailer for the whatever the award show was. The Tonys? The Tonys. And then I was like, why did you do that? Why? But then I learned that some people were mad that they even did anything for Wicked at the Tonys, so I guess that's why. But
I have also heard they're gonna do a like a live, not a sing along, but like performance of some of the songs from Wicked.
yeah.
And I've heard it might include some of the ones from this, like original songs from Wicked 2. And I don't know that I love that idea.
I will tell you that you are the only person I keep hearing this from.
Oh,
I've yet to hear this, so I cannot confirm or deny. But if true, I think it's a mistake. I don't think they should do that. But what do I know? So,
yeah, what do we know about marketing?
but in terms of this trailer, I think it did its job. I quite literally don't want to see another Wicked trailer.
Yeah.
If they release another like 2.5 minute trailer, we're at too much now. And I've kind of been thinking that for trailers in a while because
ever since Captain America.
there's just, it's been longer than that. It's like when you're releasing, and Endgame kind of did this, where everything Endgame did was within the first 5 minutes of the movie. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just,
yeah, or it's like when a trailer puts the best moments in the trailer.
right. Like when 2 trailers have almost the exact same things and nothing new, there's no point to release 2 trailers. So just focus on making a really good first trailer, and then we don't have to worry about the second trailer. That's how I think Hollywood should go. They will never go that route, but that's what I think. I think Wicked does it right.
One thing that I have seen from this trailer that somebody pointed out was they show the part where Elphaba draws in the sky words, and they pointed out that the sky is dark and gloomy, and her words show the blue sky behind the clouds. And it's a contrast to the Wizard of Oz. I think it's the Wizard of Oz, where something's written in the sky, but it's blue sky, and then the words are written in dark, gloomy clouds. So I thought that's a good parallel. Also heard a crazy theory Taylor Swift's going to be in it as Dorothy.
Okay.
Kind of hope that one doesn't come true.
I don't think that's happening.
No hate to the Swifties.
Also, she doesn't write anything in the sky in the stage show, right? Like, that's new.
I think that's new.
So the next trailer we have to talk about is something I'm interestingly excited for. Not because I think we need it. I don't think we do. I just think it's an interesting development from Hollywood.
It's more of a teaser.
Yeah, the trailer itself kind of sucks. I mean, it's just an announcement. But I figured we'd react to the news. We are getting a Spaceballs 2.
What? Never heard of her.
That's insane to me.
I would like to just make a statement now that if there's a movie that came out before I was the age of 5 that's not made for children, there might be a decent chance I haven't seen it.
See, that's so funny because I watched this movie as a child.
Well,
Like, probably at 7.
it's not for children, is it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I watched Austin Powers as like a
All right.
6-year-old.
Well,
Maybe a 7-year-old. Maybe 8. I don't know.
I am slightly intrigued because I have seen some of the casting for this, and I feel like it's been so long since the first one that I feel like a modern day parody of that would be maybe pretty humorous.
Well, your man Lewis Pullman's going to be in it. So.
I know, alongside his dad, Bill Pullman.
So
that's going to be pretty cool.
But I thought the first one was funny, but again, I was a kid. I would be interested to see how it holds up.
And how much it references like sci-fi stuff and things that have happened since then.
So keep an eye on that one. And then the third one we have to talk about is one that I think we've talked about on this show before.
I think I did an honorable mention for it a long time ago as a movie I was looking forward to seeing this year, to which Ian said never heard of her.
But I've since seen this trailer, this one that they released earlier this week, I believe. I do think it's the second trailer, but I have not seen the first trailer. I just have seen the second trailer, and I'm hooked. I'm intrigued.
See, we did also mention it last week when we were talking about the Cannes Film Festival.
Was it there?
Yes,
It was there.
It was there.
And that is
Eddington.
But yeah, I mean, this looks strangely intense.
Intriguing. It's it occurs in Texas during the COVID pandemic, and it's going to be sort of a modern day Western. We're going to see the mayor of Eddington, played by Pedro Pascal, facing off with the sheriff of Eddington, who is played by Joaquin Phoenix, and it seems like he might be coming for Pedro's job.
Yeah.
I am interested to see how they capture the COVID aspect of this. I also wonder if it didn't do as well at the Cannes Film Festival because it's a Western. I feel like Westerns don't always do well. But 2, I wonder how American, I say in quotations, it feels.
I think it'll be interesting to see if one of them is, because it's right now very set up as Joaquin Phoenix versus Pedro Pascal, and I'm just curious which side will be viewed as, if a side at all will be viewed as the protagonistic side, and which side will be viewed as the antagonistic side.
Yeah, I am also intrigued because I kind of feel like just based off the trailer, I see it both ways.
So I think that'll be interesting, or maybe it'll give everybody something to think about. But it's interesting that it's coming out now, a good 5 years after the pandemic, but
Yeah, I think it's an Ari Aster film.
it is. I like Joaquin Phoenix and I like Pedro Pascal, so
So it should be pretty good.
yeah. And it's always good to see a movie come out that's not like a big blockbuster thing that like contains like
But it's still an original
big name
story.
actors. Right. That's what I mean.
Oh, I see. Yes.
It's not a blockbuster, it's like an original story.
Yeah.
Could be a blockbuster, I guess.
It'll be interesting to see how well it does at the box office. Because I feel like lately there's this big talk about how original stories don't do well.
Yeah. So we'll see. What's the most original story that's out right now?
Right now,
It's that rom-com.
Materialist.
Yeah. I think it's that one. Is that original? Is that based on a book or anything?
That might be based off of a book. Rom-coms I feel like aren't usually original these days. But that also stars Pedro Pascal. That is also a movie I would like to see. Don't know that we'll be reviewing that one on this podcast, though. Unless the people want it. Let us know, people.
It looks like it's original.
I have heard it described as the millennials version of Challengers.
Oh. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
You know, a classic love triangle.
Oh.
Oh.
It's written and directed by the director and writer of Past Lives.
Oh, that is intriguing.
Yeah, so this looks to be original. The film was released alongside How to Train Your Dragon. It was projected to gross 7 to 9 million,
Well,
but it made 5 million on its first day, including 1.5 million on Thursday night.
crazy.
And it overperformed, debuting at $12 million. And finished behind How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch. So it's making money.
That's it.
And it has good reviews.
Are we gonna watch it?
When are we gonna have time?
Yeah, I know.
So there's a short little episode of trailer talk. Maybe we should give each trailer a quick rating. Can we do that?
Yeah.
What would you think the Wicked trailer? What would you give the Wicked trailer?
I would give the Wicked trailer a 5 out of 5.
I would also give the
I'm
Wicked trailer
so
a 5 out of
hyped.
5. Spaceballs 2 trailer.
It was more like an announcement. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I'd give it like a.
Not that I'm not intrigued to eventually see it, but that wasn't really a trailer.
Probably give it like a 0.5 or something.
Eddington?
Eddington. Probably give it a 4.5. I think it really did its job. I'm really
Yeah, I was thinking a 4 out of 5.
I'm really intrigued.
It's pretty good.
So, drop your thoughts on any of the trailers. Any trailers you thought we missed. in the recent weeks, drop down below. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Post Credits Commentary. We have a bit of a longer episode this time, but that's okay. Yeah, thanks for joining. We will see you next time.
Bye.